Hi, I'm Dale Holliday coming to you from Corvallis, Oregon in the bountiful Willamette Valley. Welcome to my show, Valley Views, a forum for sharing relevant topics relating to people and issues in the Willamette region. Okay. Hi, good morning, folks. Thanks for joining us today. I'm here for part 2 of conversation with Christy Wright, who is an RN and a BSN, and was a former certified hospice palliative care nurse. And in the first part, if you caught that, we were talking about end-of-life situations, and we thought we'd come back and talk about how to have some of these conversations with our family and how to access resources for this. So thank you, Christy, for coming back.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Previously, we talked about end of life and making decisions about how that happens, and sometimes people's reluctance to planning for those times at the end of life. And so what have you observed? I mean, we talked about how a lot of people aren't comfortable with that, and I don't know, it seems like you and I both are okay with that. We plan for our situations, and I don't know what makes us different with, but I don't know. But what do you think about that? Why is it so hard?
Well, again, I think it's hard for people to consider life without them in it. And I think as a society, we worship the youth and the health, and we don't give a whole lot of time towards the end of life.
Yes.
And the end of life rarely happens like it happens on television,
Yes.
Or in the movies. I've had a couple of patients that kind of expected their death to go like a movie, and they would lay back on their pillow and kind of throw their hand over their forehead and kind of expect it to die, and it rarely looks like that.
Interesting.
And so I think the more that a person can read and have some notion about how they want their end of life to go, the easier it is actually to have the conversation with a family member.
Yeah.
And I do think it's easier as you get older to give some thought to that. Certainly, I think we're trying to make it easier to get information to people.
Absolutely. Well, it's funny. Right before you talked about expecting it to look like a movie, I was thinking, we don't even really see a lot of old people in our media. I mean, you go to the movies, it's rare to have a movie with an elder actor in it. And, my goodness, especially when women actors reach a certain age, like 40, they have problems getting roles. I mean, I'm a movie buff, so I just observe these things.
And the women of age that we celebrate, we often say, don't they look good for their age?
Right.
They've had a lot of work done to look
absolutely.
younger. Yes, we do not celebrate the wisdom of aging very well.
Yes, that is true. Well, and you mentioned too how people expected death to be. I will totally admit, when my mom passed away in February, she had a fall, and then she passed away 4 days later. And I'll tell you, people at the hospital, and myself included, we really didn't know what was keeping her going. I mean, I even, you know how sometimes you can observe when their spirit leaves them, they just kind of look like they've lost weight or something. I mean, it's just something left the body. And she reached that stage, but she was still alive.
It does take longer oftentimes than we think it will. And back in the olden days, I always say that when I was in nursing school, so 40 years ago, we would think that it was inhumane really to keep fluids away from someone.
Yes.
And we've really, really learned that the body is made for the end of life, just like it's made to be born. And the more that we can support that process, and the fewer interventions really that we do with IVs or tubes of any kind, really the easier it is on the person.
Yes, absolutely. And that's what that I had mentioned in the former show, that there was just enough to keep her comfortable. And I know that's how she wanted it, because we had that discussion. and that's how I want it, and there you go. Everyone's different, though. Yeah.
Well, people are. I do think it's important to instruct yourself, because we watch movies. We have a notion of how we think things ought to be, and really, the more that you know about end of life, I think the less scary it is.
And life is not a movie.
No,
that
it's
is
not.
certainly
No, it's
true.
not.
Certainly
Yeah.
true. And I know when my dad passed away, it was a different situation, so I didn't get to observe a prolonged leaving, because he died immediately. He had a heart. He was just boom.
You know, I think quick deaths are easier on the person and harder on the loved ones that are left behind, and more extended deaths are, you know, really hard on the patient, but easier on the family, honestly.
Yes.
So,
well, you know, how can people maybe have a conversation about this with their families? I mean, you run into this a lot, and there may be listeners out there who are thinking maybe they want to do this, but how do they
start?
Yeah.
Well, you know, I just want to throw a couple of statistics at you.
Yes, absolutely.
90% of people surveyed thinks that it's really important to talk to their family about end of care life, but only 27% have done any kind of conversation at all. you know,
Yeah.
Same thing. 80% of people think it's important for their doctors to know about their end of life wishes, but really only 8% of people have talked to their doctors about what they want their end of life to look like.
Interesting. Yes.
Yes, so there's a big margin there that we can do a little bit of education. I think it will be really helpful. Ellen Goodman, the former political columnist, has started something that she's calling the Conversation Project. And she has a whole pamphlet of like different questions, and it's not like yes or no questions. It's like, if I had a terminal illness, I would prefer to, and there's like 5 steps, like not do anything at all, up to, you know, that would be 1, and number 5 would be doing absolutely everything that could possibly be done. And so there's like, you know, so that before you sit down to have a conversation with your family member, you can get really clear in your own mind how you're feeling about this.
Yeah, find out where you're at.
Yeah, and the other thing is nothing's written in concrete, right? You can always go back and like change that.
Absolutely.
But it does give you a starting point. Well, how much do you want to know from the doctors? You know, do you want to know everything and you want to be the only person making the decisions versus I don't want to know any details at all, and I want my family member to make all the decisions.
Interesting.
Yes.
Yeah,
so there's a big continuum.
Yeah.
It's not just one way or the other way. But once you get that settled in your mind, you know, I think there's like 25 questions. Then you can actually use that to have a conversation with your family member. You can sit down with the pamphlet, they can look at it, and you can, you know, kind of talk about those kinds of things. Or you could talk about Aunt Mildred and the decisions she made, and did that work for her? Did it not work for her? How might you want to tweak that a little bit so it works a little better?
Yeah.
The thing I think about having a conversation, and the reason I believe it's really important, is that paperwork will only take you so far. If you show up in the emergency room without your paperwork, then, you know, the ER doctors are obligated to like treat you.
Sure, absolutely. To do
Whereas
everything.
if you show up in the ER without your paperwork, but you've got a family member with you that can advocate for you, that knows what you want, then, you know, that's going to go way smoother for you.
Yeah, that's very important. Well, I know when I did my medical directive, I filed it with my doctor's office and with the local hospital here. They recommended that, and then of course my husband has it, and you know, vice versa. You know, I have his, and the same thing.
Yeah, you need to spread that around.
Yeah.
You know, some churches
and
I
my
know.
sister has it.
Yeah, some churches I know actually will hold your advanced care directive.
That makes sense too. Yeah, and it makes sense. I mean, like you say, the more people that have it, because someone might be out of the country, so you might have set it up, and then those people have passed passed away, or or they misplaced it, or who knows what's happened. Well, I like the format of this. Now, there was the conversation project
with Ellen Goodman, and it's online. They will actually send you some of those little pamphlets, or you can print it out and and then fill it out, and then it, like you said, it's just a tool.
Yeah, a tool. Yes,
just a tool.
It sounds good. It gives people options. It's not one size fits all.
Right, and there's no right and a wrong answer.
Right. Well, I know there's no formula, but if people are wondering, okay, at what age should I do this? Or how do I approach my family? I mean, how do I get this rolling in my own life?
Sometimes people, certainly in my family, being a hospice nurse, we've talked about death and dying since the kids were little. And so it's just kind of a topic of conversation.
Yes.
It's not something big or scary or, so I would say you start young, start early. But if you've not had that opportunity, not been able to create that opportunity, I would suggest starting with, I need your help with something, or there's something I've been thinking about, and I'm wondering when would be a good time to share that. I would say make sure that you have longer than 10 minutes, because it's going to take, and it's not going to be done in one session.
Sure.
You're going to talk a little bit, they're going to go off, they're going to think a little bit, then you're going to come back and you're going to re-talk.
Right.
And until people seem settled, and people don't always agree,
Right. Oh, absolutely. I'm sure they don't.
Or and your siblings may not, there may be some dissension within the family.
Right.
So I think it's good to start early so that you can kind of nail that down.
That's great. And I love your idea about having advocates and spreading that word, because, when you're sick, or when you're in the ER, or you're in that coma or whatever, that is not the time for the family to start fighting about what's next. But of course, that's what happens.
I had a doctor friend that said that he was a no code, but not to ask him while he was sick in the emergency room.
Right.
So we don't always make our best decisions when we're down and
stressed
in the midst of it.
Well, this is a fascinating topic, and it's a very timely topic for everyone out there. And
we spend a lot of money at the tail end of life, keeping people alive when they don't want to be, right? And so it's just timely from many different angles. I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Well, Christy, we have reached the end of our time here on the show. I want to thank you so much for being here, and this is such an important topic that affects everyone.
Yeah, I just want to say again, theconversationproject.com.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Okay, well, you have a good rest of your day.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. You've been listening to Valley Views. I'm your host, Dale Holliday, and I'd love to hear from you. Comments, questions, ideas for future topics, or other matters you would like explored. Email me at valleyviews@kbu.org. That's VALLEYVIEWS@kbu.org. Special thanks to Chad Howard from Corvallis Access Media for his technical assistance and support. I look forward to being with you again next time. And remember, as Doctor Who once said, I'm not in charge, but I'm full of ideas. Bye!